You know how some roles seem to bridge different worlds? Like they somehow speak both engineering and economics or technology and sales?
Yeah, the connectors.
Exactly. We're talking about those really critical connectors in the business to business world. Today, we're taking a deep dive into this fascinating paper. It's called On the Basis of the Sales Engineering Competences and Education.
Hmm.
And it really pulls back the curtain on this role they call the sales engineer, specifically looking at it from a European perspective.
And what's really, I think, illuminating about this paper is it's one of the first proper studies looking at what makes a great sales engineer, what skills, what education across Europe,
Hmm.
and maybe most importantly, why this role is just absolutely critical for the global economy, really.
Hmm.
So by the end of this, you'll get a much clearer picture of this vital but often kind of undefined profession
Right.
and maybe some of the surprising challenges in actually training people for it.
Right. Okay, so let's start there then. Let's try and pin down what a sales engineer actually is, because it sounds like, maybe surprisingly, there isn't one single clear definition everyone agrees on, even now.
That's pretty much it. At its core, though, a sales engineer, or SE, you'll hear that a lot is someone selling highly technical products or complex services,
Hmm.
but crucially to other companies, B2B.
Not to consumer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they don't just, push products. They're acting much more like expert consultants.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Their goal is suggesting solutions. Solutions that work technically, obviously, for the customer's specific situation, but also make sense economically.
Yeah,
Aiming for the best outcome for their client, but also for their own company. It's a balance.
that makes sense. So it's way more than just knowing the product data sheet.
Right. Absolutely.
The paper really seems to hammer this home, calls it a unique profession, a mixture of technical, sales, business management, and even soft skills.
With the internationalization woven throughout.
Yeah. Right. Which suggests that those traditional academic boxes, engineering over here, economics over there, sales somewhere else, they don't quite fit sales engineering, do they?
They really don't. Look, they absolutely need that solid engineering foundation, got to grasp the technology, how the product actually works.
Sure.
But then, and this is key, they have to connect that tech view to the economic reality.
Like the cost.
Yeah, cost implications, definitely, but also the bigger picture, broader macroeconomic stuff sometimes. And because they're consultants, they need really sharp communication skills
Mm-hmm.
and psychological competence, the paper calls it, to figure out what the customer really needs, which might not be written down in any spec sheet.
The unstated needs.
Exactly. The paper even mentions they might use, quite sophisticated methods like Kano's model for customer satisfaction or a cow's quality function deployment.
Okay, what do those do?
Well, Kanto helps sort of uncover those needs that customers don't even realize they want or can't articulate. And QFD, quality function deployment, that helps translate those nuanced customer desires directly into technical specs for the product, making sure what gets built is actually what's needed.
That's fascinating. So that's where it gets really impactful for you, the listener, because these sales engineers, they work across a huge range of B2B industries, right?
Massive range.
Like plant and machine engineering, electronics, medical devices, software development. It goes on.
You name it. If it's complex and sold business to business, there's likely an SE involved.
And the paper pulls out 5 essential competencies they need: a solid engineering knowledge base,
Foundational.
profound sales, negotiation, marketing skills,
Yep, the commercial side.
understanding economic and business administration issues,
Got to know the business context.
essential communication skills, and crucial soft skills like giving good presentations. It really sounds like a multi-talented role.
It truly is. And the demand, particularly in Europe, for people who can do all this is just colossal.
Oh, colossal.
Well, think about this. Just the internal trade among EU 28 member states back in 2015 was over 3,000 billion euros.
3 trillion.
3 trillion euros, yeah. Over 3,063 billion. And that was up more than 50% in just 13 years.
Wow.
And a huge chunk of that, over 63%, is manufactured stuff.
Mhm.
Machinery, vehicles, that kind of thing.
And that's just inside the EU.
That's just intra-EU.
Yeah.
Then you look at exports outside the EU. The paper points out manufactured goods make up about 80% of those total annual exports.
Okay.
So in 2013, exported machinery, vehicles, other manufactured goods that hit 1,365 billion.
So if you add it up, technical intra-EU trade is over 2,000 billion, extra-EU over 1,300 billion, annually.
Exactly. And remember, these huge numbers don't even touch other sectors beyond manufacturing or
Yeah.
purely domestic trade within countries.
It paints a picture of just incredible economic scale and complexity.
It absolutely does. I mean, manufacturing alone is just a bedrock for Europe's economy.
Hmm.
We're talking 2.1 million companies, nearly 30 million employees, adding 1,630 billion in value in 2013.
Huge numbers.
Even just the high-tech manufacturing bit had a trade volume of 683 billion in 2015.
Yeah.
So when you realize a sales engineer is deeply involved in making all this complex, high-value trade actually happen,
The need for really good ones becomes obvious.
undeniable, stark even.
Okay, so that massive economic engine naturally raises the question, how many of these highly skilled people do we actually need? And this is where the paper gives a, well, pretty eye-opening
It's
estimate.
quite a calculation.
Yeah, they say if you assume one sales engineer generates, say, 5 million in turnover each year.
Which seems plausible for complex B2B deals.
Right, and they have maybe a 40-year career. Europe would need something like 16,500 new sales engineers, everything here,
Just to keep things ticking over at the current rate.
just to maintain current output. And even if you're more optimistic, say double the turnover to 10 million per SE.
You'd still need over 8,000 new people annually.
That's a lot of engineers who can also sell.
It is. And this is where the supply challenge really hits home.
All right.
You compare that demand, 8,000 to 16,500 needed each year, to the reality, the Academic Association of Sales Engineering, or AS.
Right, you mentioned them. Set up in 2014.
That's the one. They were set up specifically to champion this profession, try and standardize the education. They report fewer than 1,000 sales engineers graduating each year from their member institutions.
Fewer than 1,000, compared to needing maybe 8,000 plus.
See the gap? It's significant. Almost alarming, you could say. The AS exists precisely because of this, to promote the job, define what the education should look like, help students move between universities.
It sounds like they're crucial, especially because sales engineering isn't really like a fully established academic career path everywhere in Europe, is it?
Not uniformly, no. It's not officially recognized as a distinct profession across the board. Germany's probably furthest along, maybe 30 bachelor's and master's degrees, mostly started in the last 15 years or so.
Uh-huh.
But other places like Austria, Finland, France, very few. And the study found none in Italy or Spain at that time.
So it's patchy.
Very. And it's not just about cranking out more graduates. It's about how universities can even create this kind of uniquely multidisciplinary professional. You know, when academia often likes its neat little silos.
Breaking down those walls.
Exactly. Resisting that integration can be a real challenge.
So how is the AZ trying to structure this? You mentioned standards.
Right. So to tackle this, they talk about 4 key pillars for a typical sales engineering training program.
Okay, pillars. What are they?
Technical scientific first,
Yeah.
then sales and marketing. Third is business and management. And fourth is personal skills.
Right, makes sense. Covers the bases we talked about.
It's the framework, basically,
Mhm.
what an SE needs to master. Now, for bachelor's degrees, typically 6 to 8 semesters, the data they gathered shows, on average, about 40%, 40.3% actually, of the course time is dedicated to science and technology.
So nearly half.
Yeah, with a recommended minimum of 30%. So technical foundation is clearly seen as paramount at the bachelor's level.
Okay, what about the other pillars for a bachelor's?
Sales and marketing averages around 24.8%, with a minimum suggested at 15%. Business and management comes in around 20.8%. And personal skills, that's things like languages, presentations, teamwork, averages 14.1%.
So bachelor's programs are really aiming to build that core mix.
Yeah.
Strong tech, good selling, and marketing skills right from the start.
That's the idea. Create graduates ready to hit the ground running with that blend.
And then master's degrees. Does the focus change?
Oh, significantly. These programs, usually shorter, 2 to 4 semesters, they generally require a technical bachelor's degree to even get in.
Ah, so they assume the tech base is there.
Precisely. So because that's assumed, the science and technology part drops way down, averaging just 5.8% in the master's curriculum.
Wow, huge drop. So what takes its place?
Sales and marketing becomes dominant, averages 47.2%. That's nearly half the master's program.
Okay.
And business and management is also a major focus, around 40.9%.
So it almost flips. Less core tech, much more strategy, sales, business acumen.
Exactly. This shift in masters isn't just about, say, leadership training, although that's part of it.
Yeah.
It reflects a really crucial insight, I think, for this profession. Once that technical foundation is solid,
Yeah.
true mastery, and therefore leadership potential, comes from really deeply understanding the economics, the market dynamics, and the human element of selling complex solutions. It's almost an inversion of a typical engineering master's focus.
That's a really interesting reprioritization. It sounds like master's level SEs are being groomed for more strategic roles.
Deepening that understanding of business issues,
Yeah.
advanced sales strategies, yeah.
The paper also talks about practical experience, right? And international stuff.
Absolutely vital. Can't just be theory. Most programs require at least one semester abroad, either studying or doing an internship. And a minimum of a 3-month internship in a company is pretty standard.
And languages.
Essential. Strong English is basically mandatory. A second foreign language is highly valued. Students are really pushed to get long-term international experience, ideally in a country where they don't speak the native language.
To really immerse themselves.
Yeah, navigate an unfamiliar environment, understand different cultures, and crucially, build their professional network internationally. Could be study exchange, could be an internship abroad.
It's not just a nice to have then, it's core.
It's seen as building resilience, adaptability, skills you absolutely need when you're trying to navigate complex global deals.
It sounds like building this standardized, internationally recognized education is pretty complex, though, especially making sure students don't lose time if they go on exchange.
Yeah, coordinating credits and curricula across countries is a headache. The NAC is working on defining common modules, maybe for 1 or 2 semesters, to make those exchanges smoother.
And the end goal is certification.
That's the aim. Certify these curricula, that would do a few things, guarantee a certain quality level for companies hiring.
Right, a seal of approval.
Exactly. But also, importantly, raise the profile of this really critical but often kind of under the radar profession. Get it recognized by society, by policymakers.
So let's pull this together. What does this all really mean for you listening? We've sort of unpacked this fascinating world of sales engineers, this intersection of deep tech knowledge and sharp business sense.
And you've seen just how indispensable they are for Europe's absolutely colossal trade in technical goods and services. Remember those numbers? Intra-EU trade over 3,000 billion annually,
Extra EU exports over 1,300 billion.
with manufacturing being this huge driver. These aren't just abstract figures. They represent countless complex, high-stakes deals where the technical possibility has to meet the economic reality.
And without sales engineers acting as that bridge.
Yeah, those deals could easily fall apart. Miscommunication, inefficiency, billions left on the table, due to the grease in those massive economic wheels.
And then there's that staggering, you called it almost crisis level gap.
Yeah.
An estimated need for 8,000 to maybe 16,500 new sales engineers every year in Europe.
Compared to fewer than 1,000 actually graduating from the specialist programs run by AS members.
It's a profession clearly in incredibly high demand, but facing a really critical supply problem, a bottleneck that could actually hold back trade and innovation.
Which brings us to a really important question, I think. Given how critical sales engineers are for driving technical trade for innovation, and given these current challenges in providing enough standardized, high-quality education, how might the definition and the training of this unique profession need to fundamentally evolve? How does it need to change to really meet the accelerating demands of this rapidly changing, increasingly digital, totally interconnected global marketplace?
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Just how crucial these specialized bridge building roles are and how getting their education right, strategically defining it now, could genuinely shape the future of international business for decades.
A lot to consider.
Definitely. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of sales engineering.